We'll call to order this meeting of the California Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board. It's Wednesday, August 15th, 2018. We're beginning at 1:01 p.m. Begin with the roll call. The chair is present. Vice Chair Allen? Here. Member Corbett?
Here.
Please show all members present. Move on to approval of the minutes of our July 18th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of July 18th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Please show the minutes being approved unanimously. Moving on now to Chair's report, and I don't have a report this month. So we can move on to board members' report. Vice Chair Allen.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I've been advised that the newsletter is ready to roll and go out. I think it's been reviewed by everyone, looked at by everyone. I would just say that I think this newsletter coming out is a very positive, forward-looking newsletter, and I'm quite proud of the good work that's been put into it. I hope that the staff enjoys it, the agency enjoys it, but I think it's a good newsletter. Sound like an editor, don't I? You know, it's And then the other thing is that I just wanted to talk briefly. There was a comment made at one past board meetings about our precedents, and maybe that when we do our precedents, maybe shorter is better in terms of making them simpler, or more easier to understand and to implement. And I was thinking that maybe it'd be a good thing if the precedent committee looked at the idea that when we do issue the precedents, is that maybe we could have a study guide attached to them as to the thinking that went behind the precedent, to explain it, because sometimes they're taken too narrowly or too broadly. And so I just thought that might be a good thing to do when we do issue our precedents, to make it easier for the folks we're asking to implement them to understand that we like to think that the decisions speak for themselves, but you know that that's not always the case. So sometimes it's good to know what we're emphasizing and what the thinking behind it was. So anyway, that's it for my report.
Thank you, Michael. Member Corbett.
I'll waive my report except to say just my continued thanks to the IT department as I continue to work through the glitches in my new device. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Ellen. At this point in the agenda, we have time for public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board? Any members of the public wishing to address the board? Seeing none, we'll move on to a report by our Executive Director, Elena Gonzalez.
Good afternoon, Board Chair and Board members. I know we have a lot with the budget today, so my report also will be brief. In terms of the timeliness measures, we have closed 62% of the cases in less than 30 days and 91.3% within 45 days. And the average age of a case pending in the field is 24.5 days. I also wanted to report that although we haven't gotten the official letter from the Department of Labor, but unofficially through EDD, CUIAB has passed all quality review standards, the timeliness, as well as the quality review of the decisions of the ALJ. So that is a good thing. So CUIAB, as a part of the appeals process, will not be subject to corrective action on anything over the past year. So that's good news for all of us, and it's good news to those in the field and in appellate who get the job done and make the rest of us look good. Two more things is there is an Executive Leadership Academy that Sacramento State puts on. We sent 2 presiding judges in the last semester of it. This year we're sending 2 more. It's over 4 months, 1 night, 1 day or 2 days?
2 days.
Oh, sorry.
A month.
Lori set it up as, we can rely on Lori, so it's 2 days a month for 4 months, and they get together with other leaders in California to discuss leadership strategies and so on. So we just had to apply, and Michael Kutry from San Diego and Felicity No, the new presiding judge in Inglewood, were accepted into the class, and so they'll be starting to attend those, and it's been a useful thing. We're trying to rotate all the presiding judges through that academy. I guess that was it, the Department of Labor and the Leadership Academy. So other than that, things are sometimes no news is good news, and that's all I have unless you have questions.
Elena, first of all, great news about the timeliness of cases and our status with the Department of Labor. Did we hire another new PJ since our last board meeting?
See, that's terrible. I forgot to tell you. Yes, indeed, we did. I did send out the notification that Mark Merowitz thank you for reminding. Mark Merowitz was appointed the permanent presiding judge in the Oxnard Office of Appeals. He has operated as the acting presiding judge in that office for quite some time and has done a very good job, and we're looking forward to working with him in that office. So yes.
Chief, do you have one more thing?
The security report. I'm sorry. What's wrong with me today? I think I'm getting old is the problem. I'm forgetting stuff already. So anyway, this is what happens.
You get a break today.
You
since
turn
it's your birthday.
65 and you forget it. Sorry. No, the only incident report, again, I don't report on the personnel actions that might involve a person that we're working with on that. The only reportable action that I would report is that a claimant was an unhappy claimant was impatient and sat on the lobby table and wouldn't participate in the hearing. And after they left, she apparently toilet papered the hallway in the office. So, because that was a security incident, because it could have been worse, but she apparently took some toilet paper and was strewn about the hearing facility in Pasadena. That is our only security incident that didn't just involve some personnel issues for this month.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for?
Yeah, I have one question.
Michael?
Yeah, Elaine, and it isn't, it is great that we got a clean bill of health with the Department of Labor and all that, but just on the performance indicators, for the field case, it's closing in 30 days. The DOL standard is 60%, and ours is 62%.
Correct.
I get nervous when I see them so close to, because usually they've been a lot higher. So is this just like a blip, or is there a reason why it's so close to the standard?
The July and August are the times when most of the ALJs take vacation. So there's 2 periods of time during the year where it goes close to the line. It's holiday time, November, December, and July and August. And since it's a yearly average and not month to month, as long as we get over that average for the year, which we watch. I mean, if it were close to the line every month, it would be a concern.
Right.
But right now, it's the summer vacation. It happens every year. Right
I
now.
thought that probably was the case, but I thought I'd ask anyway.
No,
Thank you.
for bringing it up at that, because Hugh Harris and I just talked about it, and every year it kind of comes down
Okay,
to this.
thank you.
That's a good question, Michael. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Elena. Moving on now to report from our presiding administrative law judge for appellate operations, Jody Remke.
Hi, good afternoon. As the numbers reflect in the indicators in your packet here, the board continues to excel in meeting their timelines because they're doing 45 days or less at 88%, which is really impressive. The guideline is 50%, so we're at 88% there. 75 days or less, 99%. Again, great job. Average pendency being 23 days. So the board continues to move the cases in a very timely fashion, and we are on top of our timeline requirements. Any questions for me?
We appreciate the attorneys who draft those opinions, and generally we approve them. Sometimes we don't, but the work is very much appreciated. Any other questions, comments for Jody?
Just to be noted that this is with 3 board members. Think what we could do with 5.
We could get to
110%.
over 100%.
Okay, next we have a report from our acting CIO, Lori Kursaka. Lori.
Good afternoon, Chair Block and members. As you can see, IT staff continue to test products and file storage for the video recordings of your monthly board meetings. Antonio Buenrostro and Rick Freeman are here testing equipment. And the video looks very good, but we will be procuring some new equipment so that we have high definition, very nice video to present on our website. That project continues to be on schedule, and we look forward to implementing that. Second, staff are thoroughly testing the Windows 10 and new devices. Testing is going very well, and we will be pilot testing for users in the San Diego office to help develop ALJ and staff training guides for for all of our folks statewide. Windows 10 looks very different from the Windows version we have now, so we want to make sure that we train them properly before we roll out. Lastly, our headquarters phone refresh continues in Venture Oaks. The cutover for the 3rd floor of the executive office and the chief's office and appellate operations will be September 7th. We will have training for all of the staff during that week. We are scheduling board member training the morning of the September 20th board meeting. So we will get that on your calendar with Kathy. And yesterday, Elena and Georgia Komodo from our agency, from labor agency, conducted the 2nd round of CIO interviews, and we hope to be appointing a CIO shortly. Any
Thank you,
questions?
Lori. Questions or
Any
comments?
questions?
Just
You know,
thank you.
other than I always thank Lori for wearing so many hats and the good work
Thank
she
you.
does, but I know there's a lot of people in the agency who do a lot for us, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Now we move on to a two-parter. Rob Silva, our Chief of Administrative Services, is going to give his general report, but then we do have an action item attached to that, which is the approval of the 2018-19 fiscal year budget. Rob?
Thank you, good afternoon. The first part is I would like to move to the action item.
Okay.
That will be my report for this meeting. If that's okay, may proceed. We'll go right into the budget for this fiscal year. Okay, I do believe the PowerPoint slides are in the folder as well. If you need them, but I'll have it up here on the screen. Starting here, going back to December of 2017, prior to the governor's Gen 10 budget, our budget estimate for the 2018 fiscal year was projected to be almost $75.1 million. That's for salaries, benefits, and operating expenses for everything. During the budget presentation for the 17-18 fiscal year, I reported that the October 2017 revised reduced our UI workload projections to 207,850 cases for 2017-18. And that resulted in our 17-18 budget being reduced by 11.5 positions and $1.7 million. However, during that same revised period, it was reported that our minutes per unit, the MPU, which is the measure by which we get allocated for positions, had actually increased from 221 minutes per unit to 233 minutes per unit for the UI program. That increase in MPU equated to an increase of 5.5 positions for CUIAB. So our 18-19 budget has been augmented with those 5.5 positions, and the associated funding for that is what you see here on line 2, just under $843,000. The budget augmentation on the next line is for 2 items. In early 2018, State of California consolidated what was then 36 IT classifications down into 9. That resulted in pay increases for some of CUIAB's IT employees. So our budget was augmented by $45,000 this fiscal year for those salaries and benefits. And the second and larger part of this line item adjustment is an almost $1.1 million increase for overall personnel benefits. Our authority for personnel benefits increased from 66.3% last year to 70% for 2018-19. So that's the 1.1 that you see there. The next adjustment, you'll remember in 2016-17, we were rewarded a federal supplemental budget request for our audio records modernization project. The sunset for that funding was September of the 2017-18 fiscal year. So $140,000 of that associated funding was removed from our budget authority for 2018-19. The last line here is, well, good news for everybody. Effective July 1st of 2018, all CUIAB employees received a 4% general salary increase. And the specific dollar amount associated with that is not yet finalized, but we expect the augmentation to be right around $2.1 million for that effort. So this brings our projected available budget to just over $79 million for the 2018-19 fiscal year. This slide just breaks out our different budget sources for the fiscal year. Just under 90% of our budget is federal funding to administer the unemployment insurance appeals cases. We're projecting about 8.4% of the budget from state funds to administer our DI cases, our disability insurance and paid family leave appeals, as well as the disability portion of our employer tax hearings. We have a small amount of general funding from the state general fund, just 2% for the personal income tax portions of our employer tax hearings. And then we also receive a small amount of funding from Department of Child Support Services to hear cases on UI and DI child support intercept program cases, and then some funding to hear non-industrial DI cases for our state employees. Okay, this slide illustrates our increases and reductions in both expenditures and UI workload over the last 12 fiscal years. The figures you see here for 2016-17 and prior are actual expenditures. For the 2017-18 fiscal year, the 202,123 UI cases is our actual workload from last fiscal year. We don't typically receive fiscal year ending expenditures for about 6 weeks after the closure of a fiscal year, which is today. And we haven't received them yet. So for 17-18 on this, the $74.4 million in expenditures is what the board authorized to spend during last fiscal year. We don't have the actuals as of yet. Now the $74 million in projected expenditures for last fiscal year was based on the UI workload projections of almost 208,000 dispositions that were again set forth in the October 2017 revise. There was no additional projection adjustment during the May 2018 revise. Subsequently, as you can see from the chart here under 17-18, we came up short of the 208,000, only disposing of 202,000 cases. The October 17 revise also projected that we would do almost 202,000 cases in the current fiscal year, 2018-19. The October 2018 revise is upcoming, and if the projections are anywhere consistent with these annual numbers here of 202,000 cases, we will most likely see an accompanying reduction in funding, and we would have to adjust our expenditures accordingly. If and when the October 18 revise impacts our budget, we'll report it to the board, and I'm going to speak a little bit more on this as I proceed. In this slide, some large ticket items, both for expenditures and savings for 18-19 that I want to identify for the board. Firstly, we built into the budget about $1.9 million in salaries for positions that would be above and beyond any filled positions as of July 1st, 2018. Out of this total, there are only 2 new recruitments right now, equating to a total annual cost of $137,000. The other positions are only going to be filled if and when they become a necessity. Necessity first being workload driven. If the workload won't support the additional positions, we will defer hiring. More importantly, if we end up in a position in which the positions are no longer affordable, we will defer hiring. Going back to what I had just spoken about in the last slide, there's a reasonable assumption that we're going to face a fiscal adjustment with the October 2018 revise to account for the 6,000 case disparity between what was 208,000 and 202,000. That's our actual workload for now. There's a possibility that EDD's program estimates group could project an increase in the latter part of the 18-19 fiscal year, but we're just going to have to wait and see. So again, if and when October 18 revise has a significant impact, we'll report it to the board and plan accordingly. The next item here is a single line item for some IT related projects that are in parens there. EDD is engaged in a benefit systems modernization project that you may have seen in the news recently if you were watching TV, with an implementation date set for, I think, 2021. In recent months, labor agency approached us and they want us to, they placed the onus on us to work lockstep with EDD on this project so that to ensure that we're going to modernize our appeal system. So to that end, we want to earmark funds to secure vendors for the drafting of business requirements, data validation, and data verification. In addition, there are also funds earmarked for a California Department of Technology project oversight manager for this effort. Also included here, under FileBound, the appellate operations FileBound system is one major software version behind where they need to be, and we would like to hire a contract to implement the workflow redesign necessary to upgrade the FileBound system in appellate operations so it's to a supportable level. Also included in case, this is a line item for the development of a more robust IT ticketing system to provide some efficiencies in our help desk. And finally, I think it was reported just last board meeting that California Department of Technology is engaging us in an audit, and they were kind enough to make us pay for the audit. So we're going to have to pay for that 4-year process, and there are funds in this line item as well to pay for that CDT audit. Okay, the next line item is a request to upgrade our Santa Rosa hearing facility. North Bay, present, thank you. Actually, when we obtained the space, which is in a state building in Santa Rosa, we were offered a suite by DGS that was over 4,200 square feet, of which we needed about 60%. But they really wanted to occupy the entire space, which DGS likes to do, so they cut a deal with us, and our per square foot cost is about 1/3 the market value. But we did accept the suite as is, and now we would like to redesign the space to align with our standard outstation model. So we're going to do some hardwall installation to cordon off some of the unused space, and more importantly, we want to install panic buttons with escape doors, which is the typical security procedure for our ALJs at outstations. So that's the Santa Rosa outstation project. Next is an upgrade to our Oxnard phone system. That's the last. Once we have Oxnard on the new phone system, all of CUIAB will be on the same modernized system. And then lastly, this is a repeat of in years previous. It's just an adjustment we build in for personnel budget. Generally, we budget for each employee pursuant to their time base as if they're working full-time each year, but we always end up over budgeting because of the unpredictable nature of employees being out on leaves of absence or changing their time base during the course of the fiscal year. So one adjustment we can comfortably make to sort of offset that forced over budgeting is a personnel savings built in for the delay in backfilling positions. We do know that there's about a 90-day lag between somebody leaving and a backfill. So we take last year's attrition rate, understand that there's typically that 3-month period, and we project that it will equate to roughly $370,000 in savings for that gap period between backfill hires. Okay, the next 3 slides focus specifically on operating expenses and equipment. Every February, each cost center within CUIAB submits requests for certain OE&E categories. This slide shows the difference between the proposed allocations for 18-19 versus 2017-18 for these call letter categories. While there's an overall increase at the bottom right of 20%, the majority of the increase is really only in 2 categories. 8 lines down under training, you'll see a dramatic increase. Board members will remember 2013 through 16, we went through some pretty severe budget cuts, and one of the first categories typically get cut is training when that happens. So for some perspective on where we've come with training, we spent $2,000 on training in 2014-15. $14,000 in 15-16, $26,000 in 16-17, and we allocated $40,000 last year. So we're proposing allocating $128,000 in 18-19. The majority of that allocation is earmarked for some IT staff to obtain education and experience needed to sort of match the class to which they've been moved via the consolidation. Also, the new mandated leadership training for all CUIB supervisors and managers. But there's also a sizable amount in there for support staff training for both field and appellate operations staff. And then the only other large increase here is in professional service contracts, which is second to the last line down. And the majority of the increase there is the almost $1 million in IT-related projects I mentioned in the previous slide. So that's the main reason for that increase. Another contributing factor to the increase for that line is a contract we have with a private transcription vendor. We keep this vendor on retainer in the event that there's ever a bottleneck of transcript typing in appellate operations. Power of suggestion. So again, we keep them on retainer for transcript typing and appellate operations. With the influx of tax cases coming in from field, we just want to ensure that all of those get decided timely without delay so that we can meet the productions that's set forth in our tax BCP. The next slide, these are ongoing OE&E costs, which make up the majority of our OE&E budget. The overall increase in these ongoing costs is only 3%. There are only two fairly significant percentage increases. In about the middle of the page, there's a 48% proposed increase for office supplies. Over the last 4 fiscal years, we've kept CUIB office supplies allocation to a minimum. And then when savings get achieved during the course of the fiscal year, we typically release additional funding to the offices in each May. So what we decided to do this year was go ahead and we took the 4-year average of those additional funds released in May and just front-loaded them at the beginning of the budget. This gives the offices a lot more flexibility during the course of the year to order what they need more comfortably. And then secondly, there's a 22% increase in phone services and repair that you'll see here. A couple of board meetings ago, it was reported that Jeff Kumanchik had been successful in catching a lot of overbilling for our phone services here at CUIB. And I may have been a little aggressive last year when I under-allocated our phone systems. So I just tried to right-size our phones here based on what we projected to spend in 2017-18. There are also some additional funds here for some cabling that needs to be done for wireless access points in our facilities this fiscal year. But again, the overall change is only a 3% increase. And this slide is the overall OE&E difference, which is only a 5% increase from what we allocated last fiscal year, almost $832,000. Moving on to personnel comparison. Last year, the board approved a budget of 409.1 positions and $35.6 million in salaries. For 18-19, our proposal for permanent positions is 9 less than last year. However, the temporary help request is increasing by 2.3 positions. Two of the contributing factors for this increase are shown at the bottom of the slide. For both overtime and lump sum, we went ahead and increased them with what we projected to spend last fiscal year. So we raised them to more meet the allocation of where we were spending. Both of those increases equal to half of a position equivalent. In addition, we've also increased the allocation for retired annuitant usage by about 80% of a position equivalent. This increase is primarily for insurance if we have a workload surge. That puts us into a position of needing ALJs, needing to hire ALJs. When we needed to do that last year, we're doing that utilizing our reemployment list, and there were some inherent delays with that process. So if we find ourselves in that position again this year, and if there's a delay, we wanted to raise our retired annuitant budget to make sure that we could continue to churn out the cases in that situation. Although there's a net reduction, as you can see, of 6.7 positions, there's an overall increase in salaries of $1.2 million. And the reason for that is with the general salary increases we've received over the last couple of years, our average salary has gone from $87,000 a year to almost $91,500. So that's the less positions, more money. You see that. Here is a proposal summary. As you can see in the left column, similar to last fiscal year, we're projecting to overspend our personnel budget, including benefits, by about $800,000. However, because we're projecting a significant surplus in OE&E, our fiscal reserve is $680,000, which is slightly more than last fiscal year's reserve. At the bottom, there's a breakdown of positions in dollars. These percentage separations are almost exactly as they were for last fiscal year. Very little change there. And this is simply a division of funding by branch. We have appellate operations at top at about 6.3% of the share, admin at 6.7%, IT 9.1%, executive 5%, and finally field operations at 72.9% of the total share of expenditures. Potential risks. I've mentioned the October revise a few times. We will at the very least be deferring large-scale projects and hires until after we receive workload projections for the October 2018 revise. If any reductions equate to a reduction in funding that's in excess of the $680,000 surplus I reported, we'll be deferring some items indefinitely, obviously, because we want to make sure we spend within our budget. There's always a fear of any executive order budget reductions, and litigation costs I don't think is a risk for the fiscal year. Litigation can be unpredictable, but I feel we've allocated enough of OE&E funding over the last couple of fiscal years to address litigation if and when that happens. And that's it. Unless there are some questions about that, sir.
Thank you, Rob. Now, board members, we've had an opportunity to ask Rob questions over the last couple of days because we received these early, so you go through them thoroughly. But if you have any additional questions or comments,
Just one.
now's the time. Michael.
Yeah, and thank you. It really was well covered, and we were able to look through this well in advance of this meeting. But I just want to ask you, when you meet for the October revise, and you've got your projection, is it? I don't imagine it's a smooth, like in terms of workload or how many cases we're doing from month to month. Are there big seasonal swings or variations?
Yeah, they'll go. The program estimate group at EDD gives us the initial figures, and they go out to 2 budget years. And there are seasonal adjustments as well. And there's a period given where we receive the figures, we get together and see whether or not we agree with them, and we have sort of a negotiation period with them for the remainder of this fiscal year in particular, but looking into the early part of 1920 to adjust those figures before they become part of the official budget change proposal.
The projections are based on historical workload, so
Okay.
the fluctuations, the seasonal fluctuations are built into the projection.
Okay, that's what I was asking, because if you're taking a cut based upon this as taking it as gospel that we're going to have a reduction, I just want to know that answers my question. And then the second question I have, and it isn't regarding the work product, it's great. It's just more about the process. You know, every year I bring this up in terms of was everybody within the organization given some opportunity to input into the budget so that line staff and supervisors, managers, executive staff, did everyone in the organization get some opportunity to input into the budget process?
With regard, well, the answer to your question is yes. With regard to staffing, all management within CUIAB is given the opportunity to submit call letter requests for staffing. and they are all given the same for operating expenses as well. Now, what we tell supervisors during that period is to approach staff, especially, let's say, for instance, outstation staff, if you're out in Long Beach and your headquarters maybe is somewhere else, to address any needs that they have. And so we instruct them to ask the staff what they need, both from a personnel perspective and an operating expense perspective. The call letters are submitted by everyone, so they all have input. And then when we meet to kind of decide if things are to be deferred or approved, each branch is represented as well.
And I think you understand why I asked the question, because I was here when we went through some very difficult budget years, and it's just always my belief, and it's from my own experience as a manager, that when the money isn't there, it doesn't. Usually management gets the blame if the money isn't there, even in a bad year. But I do find that the more transparent you can make the budgetary process, it's always to the good. People might not like the budget sometimes, but at least if they have an ability to know what it is and how it's constructed, and they have an opportunity to input, it's always to the good. And you've always been very good about this, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other questions or comments, Ellen?
I just have a comment. I just want to thank you for putting this together. It's a very thoughtful budget, considering trends and historic data, taking in consideration any potential adjustments there may have to be based on historical information. So thank you. I think it's put together very well, and be glad to support your recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, this is an action item. Should I take that as a motion to approve the budget?
Make the motion to approve the budget.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2018-19 CUIAB budget proposal. We'll take a roll call vote. The chair votes aye. Vice Chair Allen?
Aye.
Member Corbett?
Aye.
Please show the budget proposal being approved 3-0. And for those keeping score at home, item 9 was Rob's general report. Item 10 is the action item that we just voted upon. And item 11 is a move to closed session item. So with that, we will recess from open session, move into closed session, come back to open session after closed session is finished.